excited today to have an incredible guest speaker. We have Bernie Borges with us today, from a CEO from Find and Convert, an agency which you can ask him about later on, but he's very respectful of the podium and wants to actually give us a great primer today on how to transform your organization into, I guess for lack of a better word, a marketing juggernaut. So without any further ado, I would love to welcome Bernie to the podium. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Paulette. Thank you. Well, hey everybody, I know that you've all been networking and enjoying lunch, and so I promise that over the next 4 hours I will tell you I know that's what you want. I've been thinking about what I have planned to share with you here today, and based on some of the conversations that I had with many of you earlier, I'm curious to see how relevant it is for each of you. So what I'm going to ask you to think about is, think about how this is relevant either to you in your business or perhaps your clients. Because this concept that I'm speaking to of organization-wide marketing is really, really intended for businesses that have, generally speaking, there's no scientific black and white rule for this, but generally speaking, companies that have 50 or more employees. And you're going to see, here's a little disclaimer here, you're going to see the examples I'm sharing with you are big brands. However, I can tell you definitively that what these big brands are doing are a lot harder to do in this context of organization-led marketing than smaller companies. So if you're a 100-person company or even a 50-person company, it is infinitely less challenging than if you're a 100,000-person company, which is one of the examples that I have to share. So just a quick little bit about me. As Paulette said, I run an agency called Find and Convert. I also host a weekly podcast called The Social Business Engine. It comes out every Wednesday, so we publish today. I typically interview people from brands on how they're using social media strategically within their business. I like to blog, I like to do this here, I like to speak. I'm a member also of the Dell Social Influencer Program and also the IBM Futures Program, which is their influencer program. And not only is it an honor to be invited to both Dell and IBM's influencer program, but I learn a lot. So, they tap into people they call influencers, and they want to get value from it, but I'm here to tell you, I get a lot of value from it because I learn a lot from other influencers as well as from their customers at their events. I also am on the board of the American Marketing Association in Tampa Bay, where I reside, and VP of Communications. I am remiss in sharing one fact about myself. So before I leave the About Bernie page, I'm a native New Yorker, born and raised in Queens, graduate of Pace University, mostly the downtown campus. All right. So while I live in Tampa, Florida, which, by the way, I think you all know, we are here at New York Yankee Steakhouse. You know the Yankees are headquartered in Tampa. Right. That is their headquarters at Steinbrenner Field's facility.
Let's go Yankees.
Been there many times. Okay, so I've got this topic that I've been sort of pontificating on because of a lot of real-world application that I've been exposed to. And it really is about this fact that we've got to be doing marketing across the entire organization. So I'm going to review with you what I call a framework, specifically a 3-layer framework, and I'm going to show you some success factors as well. Now, I have what I call 3 lenses that I look at this through. So one lens is my own corporate experience. I spent a few years in corporate America, more than I want to admit. And then I started my agency also a few years ago, like 14 years ago. And then I've got this podcast where I have the privilege of interviewing people, mostly at large brands, where I say what they're doing in large companies is way harder than it is to do it in a smaller company of, say, 50 or 100 employees. So I really think that these 3 lenses has really given me the ability to kind of have this unique perspective on this topic. And fundamentally, what I really think I'm bringing to you here today is a challenge that we face in the industry, in the marketing industry. And that is that the marketing industry is really going through a transformation. The marketing department, set up in a traditional format, is set up to fail. Okay? And one reason for that is that the C-suite, all the executives in the C-suite are expecting returns on their marketing dollar like never before. And they're expecting it to be fast, which is sometimes unrealistic, and they're expecting every dime to be measurable because we now have technology that can to some degree provide some marketing analytics. However, what we're experiencing is that marketing as a department can no longer be the sole responsibility of marketing for a brand. And the reason for that is because we now live in a digital age where the consumer, and I use the word consumer, by the way, in a generic fashion. So if you're a B2B supplier, which I think many of you are, then it's not a consumer, it's a customer. But I use the word consumer generically, right? The consumer is now engaging with people, not just responding to marketing put out by the brand behind their logo. So this person-to-person interaction that's happening has changed the dynamic of marketing. So what we're really talking about here is doing marketing by getting everyone across the organization involved. Now there's another word for this, and I'm going to use the word here, but it doesn't appear anywhere in my slides. But the concept that I'm really sharing with you is called employee advocacy. Because I'm kind of giving you a little sneak preview of the rest of my session with you here today. This is really about getting employees involved and getting them to actually become advocates, and the role of the marketing department to make that happen and how to make that happen. So, as I said, I've got these three lenses, and then coincidentally, I dreamed up this framework that I call the three-layer framework for organization-wide marketing. But I think that's kind of boring, so I put it to an image. And so, the idea, and it's tasty, the idea behind it is that in this three-layer approach, you look at an ice cream sandwich. The outer layer and the two outer layers, right, are what sandwich the inner layer. And as you can see, and I'm going to break down each of these, the two outer layers are sandwiching the inner layer of the people, the employees across the organization. So let's start with the first layer, storytelling. You know, funny thing happens, we're born and our moms and babysitters and so forth tell us stories, and it's a known fact that, you know, babies respond to that. The fact of the matter is, we've also learned that we respond to stories all the way, you know, through age 90 and beyond. I mean, we as human beings respond to stories well. And marketers, some marketers have figured that out. And the marketers that are really good at storytelling are usually the best ones to actually deliver a message to their marketplace by doing it in a storytelling fashion. But storytelling needs to be authentic, okay? It can't be BS. We've got, the consumer is too smart and sees right through anything that's fabricated and not authentic. It needs to be relevant. Who can tell me, you didn't know I've got pop quizzes built into my little presentation today. Who can tell me what the attention span is of a website visitor?
8 seconds.
It used to be right, Ken. It used to be 8 seconds. It's now 4. It is now 4 seconds. So, it's all about relevance, folks. If you don't deliver a message or a story that's relevant, right here, in this moment, within those 4 seconds, we've lost the consumer. And it needs to be actionable. And by the way, the action is not always buy now, or not always click here to learn more. It needs to be, it all depends on what that content is and how it's addressing the specific part of the buyer's journey that you're trying to address. So I'm going to share with you some examples. And again, I warned you, all these examples are big companies. But again, if you're thinking, you know, we're not a big company or your clients aren't big companies, it is harder in a big company than it is in a smaller company. So this first one is a company called Avery Dennison. Anybody heard of Avery Dennison? Yeah.
Label man.
Exactly, yeah.
We're wearing one.
Yes, we are.
All
wearing
right.
one.
Awesome. So Avery Dennison is, if we said that they're in the label business, I think that would be true but not complete, right? They're in the industrial adhesive industry, right?
There you go.
And actually, the way they like to say it is, industrial sticky stuff is really what they do. So they're 25,000 employees, and what they did about 2 years ago was they launched this program called Get Social. And they created a platform internal, not external, internal, where they invited employees to go online and share experiences about what they're doing in their job or their community, or even on their leisure time. So they really made it human. They didn't just say, only tell us what you're doing in your job. They said, your job, in the community, or leisure time. Just tell us those stories. They didn't make any promises that they're going to get published or anything like that. They just empowered employees to share those stories. Some of those stories did get repurposed into stories that actually did get published online. Some of them became feature stories where they showcased an employee doing something in the community, or showcased an employee at a customer location, or whatever the case may be. Now, if you look at 3M, in the case of 3M, now they're also in the sticky stuff business, but they're also in a lot of other market segments too. There are 89,000 employees, last I heard, in their employee count. And they have a very similar program. The difference is that they are focused on their new brand identity, science applied to life. Because they have such a diverse product line, right? You find them in healthcare, you find them in automotive, they're in avionics. So all these different vertical industries that their products get manufactured and sold into. But at the end of the day, what they said is, we are a company of scientists. And what we do, everything we do at 3M is about creating scientific applications and then delivering them in a product that ultimately is contributing to life somehow. So their rebranded theme. And so just like Avery Dennison, they did exactly the same thing, where they set up a platform where they allowed employees, empowered employees to come in and share experiences that they're having. Now, this next example here, I kind of categorize it under the characteristic or the attribute of actionable, because Cisco, which is a technology company, 70,000 employees, their content is a little bit more actionable in terms of they're focused more on lead generation, right? And what B2B company isn't focused on lead generation, at least as it relates to their digital and content strategy. So they actually have a newsroom. Now, this is admittedly an elaborate setup that, frankly, a lot of us, if not most of us, if not all of us, can't do from a resource standpoint. But they've set up a newsroom, staffed with about 11 people, and they reach out to their employees to actually find stories. And then they publish those stories. They get that attention span thing because they're creating small, bite-sized, snackable content. And a lot of it, right? But they're getting almost all of it from their employees. So again, if you look at the ice cream sandwich metaphor, right? And you look at the first layer, we just looked at the storytelling layer. And I gave you some examples of how these brands are doing storytelling. But if you look at the middle layer is all about the employee. So whether you are at Starbucks and you're asking the barista behind the counter a question about the flavor of the day, or you're out in an office somewhere and a vendor representative comes in to do an implementation of software. I'm dating myself because I don't think they actually physically go on site anymore to do an implementation, right? You're talking to someone who's doing the cloud implementation, right? Whether it's one or the other, it's the employee who has the domain expertise, right? So this week's podcast that we just published this morning is with the head of digital at Johns Hopkins Medicine. And she freely admits, in the marketing department at Johns Hopkins Medicine, I mean, they're a research organization, they're a university, and of course they're a health system. And they have a global footprint. Do you think the marketing department at a health system like Johns Hopkins Medicine are the domain experts on healthcare? Of course not, right? If you look at an engineering company, is the marketing people or person the domain expert on the engineering that gets delivered to customers every day. Lawyers, same thing. On and on and on. Any industry, it doesn't matter. The domain experts are the employees that are doing the work each and every day. So it's all about the employees. And it's no wonder that once a year, the Edelman Trust Barometer keeps coming out and says the same thing. And that is that the consumer, and remember I'm using consumer generically, trusts what the employee says more than any other element of a business, including the CEO. The employee is more trustworthy than the CEO. So, if you are the marketing department and you say, okay, I get it, storytelling, totally get it. Bernie, it's not the first time I've heard that. I get it, the employees, they have domain expertise, great. Okay, so what's the role of the marketing department? Well, let's talk about that. At its basic, fundamental level, the role of the marketing department is to harness all that storytelling potential that exists within the employee base. Now, how do you do that? What are the skills that are needed in the new marketing department, whose role now is to harness the storytelling potential of employees? Well, we talked about this at our table here. There's fundamentally two types of skills that you need within your marketing team to make this happen. One is what I call quant, and these are quantitative skills. These are analytical skills. This is defining who is your customer by persona. What are the attributes of that customer? What are their pain points? What are their emotions? What's their buyer's journey? Where do they spend time? What do they read? What makes that customer tick? And again, back to the buyer's journey. What's that buyer's journey look like? What's the length of it? How many stages are in that buyer's journey? That's a quantitative skill, right? We were talking at lunch here about how we need to hire more math majors. We need to hire people with that left brain, skill set to actually perform that kind of work. But the other side of the marketing skill set is the creative. We need a lot of creatives as well. Not only to make content look good from a creative design standpoint, but also just to get the right messaging across and to design our storytelling in a way that's going to be effective and be received well by the consumer that we target it to. Now there's another role that the marketing department needs to have that may not be all that obvious, and I call that the networking role. In the networking role, this is especially true in some bigger companies. If you have, say, more than 100 employees, then network with the employees to really determine who are the ones that have some storytelling potential or have stories up here in their head. But it's the role of the marketing department, first of all, to network and identify them, but then also to ask the right questions. And here's why it's important to ask the right questions. Let's say it's an engineer. I'm just going to pick on an engineer for this context here. I'm not picking on an engineer. The engineer was hired to do engineering work, right? So storytelling was not in the job description. And storytelling may not be something that actually comes natural to an engineer. And I'm singling out that one job, right? So the role of the marketer is to ask the right questions to get the story out of that individual. So if an engineer has something to share, it may be very short and indescript and, quite frankly, boring if the marketer doesn't ask the right questions to really get the full story out of an experience. So this is a key role, is asking the right questions. And then once the marketer has asked the right questions, then it's a matter of capturing that story and then publishing that story. So the journalist skill is an important skill set as well. It's actually capturing that story and presenting it in a way that is either written or video or audio or combinations thereof.
Bernie, isn't that really kind of a public relations role? Because you see a lot of PR people are looking for good spokesmen, or one inside their companies who can tell the story well to the public.
I don't disagree with that. But I wouldn't just silo it in public relations, because unfortunately public relations has been siloed, even separate outside of marketing. And I think that in the way that marketing is conducted today, I think that's a mistake. I think if you think about PR and communications, oftentimes go hand in hand, even in a title sometimes, or the department name is sometimes PR and communications. Well, marketing is communications, isn't it? So I wouldn't silo it, and of course, every business, every industry has its nuances, but I just wouldn't silo it. So I don't disagree, I just would want to make sure that it's integrated into the overall marketing role. But it's a good question, thank you for asking that.
I'd hire a journalist. If I'm a brand manager right now and I wanted a content creator, I'd hire a journalist because they know they have exactly those skills that you need to bring in and extract that story from most enterprises very divergent opinions and expertise.
And there's a lot of talented journalists available.
Yes.
For some obvious reasons, and if we get into that,
Do not put ad blockers on your. Don't use ad blockers.
Exactly.
All right, so I actually want to show you a few more examples because I really think that examples are important so that this isn't just a bunch of ideas and theory. So, and remember, I warned you that these are all big company examples. And like I said, it's harder at a big company, so it's really impressive what some of these big companies are doing. Dell is a 110,000 employee company, and they're about to get bigger because they're acquiring a company called EMC, which is almost 50,000 people. So yeah, it's humongous. Obviously, global footprint, they're a technology company. They're way more than just PCs and monitors. I mean, they are in the whole IT stack, from desktop to everything, all the way to enterprise systems. And so they actually created a university, an internal university called SMAC-U. It's an acronym. It stands for Social Media and Community University. And they actually allow any employee to go through SMAC-U, and they teach these employees on how to create content, how to do storytelling, and how to use social media. But they don't do it just for the sake of teaching employees to do that. They teach those employees how to apply those skills within their job so that they can actually create business results. And every employee that comes out of that program, their manager, the manager of that employee gets a report on how they did in the curriculum, and then their manager is accountable for working with that employee to ensure that that employee is actually using these new skills in their job to produce business outcomes. And they're focused on measuring business results. They're focused on outcomes that they can say that had an impact on a business. So these are not just qualitative skills, these are quantitative skills. These are business skills that they're really focused on through social media, through SMAC University. Humana, another big company, around 50,000 employees, and they're also going through a merger or acquisition with Aetna. They have an internal social network. I don't know if you're familiar with the phrase Enterprise Social Network. The acronym for that is ESN. So an enterprise social network is, think of it as like a hybrid between Facebook and LinkedIn, but internal. So it's LinkedIn-like in that you can network with people throughout the organization, you can see their profiles, you can see their job responsibilities, you can see their work history, projects they worked on, skills they have. But it's Facebook-like because you can also, the employee can optionally put in hobbies and pictures of family, because they want to humanize it, right? We live in this world now where, employees are real people, and the lines are blurred between who we are professionally and who we are, outside of work, right? Those lines are blurred. And so at Humana, with their ESN, their Employee Social Network, or Enterprise Social Network, they've really made that easy for employees to blur those lines and actually engage with each other. And the storytelling that happens there naturally, and even the CEO is actively involved in the ESN and actively engages with employees. So that's another example. Now, this next example is an interesting one. This is a smaller company, about 500 employees. Now, this is the unsexiest product in the world. Even more unsexy than industrial sticky stuff. They make industrial solder paste. Now, their product, their solder paste, gets sold to manufacturers of any product like our smartphones, our laptops, even cars. Anything that has a circuit board on it, which most of our cars, if you have a car that's 5 years old or younger, you've got circuit boards on that car, right? So all the circuit boards, the circuitry has to get soldered on. They use solder paste. They manufacture solder paste in different chemical compositions for different applications. So they sell to these manufacturers globally with a high concentration in a lot of Asian markets, right? Korea, Japan, that kind of thing. So, surprisingly, here's a B2B company in a very industrial niche, right? There's nothing sexy about this product. There's nothing that's mainstream about this product, right? Walk down the street here, I'm not